myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is April 27th, 2020. We're still deep into the COVID-19 quarantine, self-quarantine. I am in this studio by myself. I am not putting anyone else at risk, and I can't touch any of you, so you're safe. We have a really important show today. Any of you who've been listening to my podcast any length of time know that I place a great deal of value in muscle. And we're going to be talking about how exercise may protect against deadly complications of coronavirus, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, whatever you want to call it. It's got so many names. So we're going to get into that in just a second with Dr. Zhen Yan, which I realize I have his name misspelled now on the artwork, so I'm going to have to correct that. Before we get started, I do have to mention that our title sponsor is Legendary Foods, and they have a brand new discount for us that includes a tasty pastry. I know a lot of you were a little disappointed that the previous discount code we had didn't include the tasty pastry. The tasty pastry is a Pop-Tart with 9 grams of protein and less than 1 gram of sugar. It's delicious. I ate 2 of them yesterday afternoon. I ate one and I had to eat the other one too. We now can get 10% off everything at eatlegendary.com by using the code SHR10. And that does include the tasty pastries. And of course, we can't forget about their amazing nut butters and seasoned nuts, which are out of this world. I can't say enough about these products. People who try them, I can't keep the nuts in the house anymore. I go through them so quickly. My favorite right now is the Buffalo Blue Wings. These nuts are the best, and you could tell the almonds are fresh when you eat them. They're not dried out, and they don't taste like latex paint. And anybody who's ever eaten a bad almond knows what I'm talking about there. So check them out. Show them some love. EatLegendary.com. The code SHR10 for 10% off all of your orders, including the tasty pastry. So go there or be square. I'm going to bring my guest in now, Dr. Zhen Yan. How you doing, Dr. Yan?
Doing great. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, by the way. This is really so, you know, I love talking about muscle. I think that mainstream medicine and science have lost the real value, or the value of muscle acquisition and maintenance as we age has been lost amongst most mainstream doctors today. But you get it. I look at your work. Your CV is 66 pages long. You've published like 151 different peer-reviewed studies, right?
Over 110.
Okay. All right. So I mean, it's just amazing, and you've really gotten deep into this. So this recent paper, how exercise may protect against the deadly complications of coronavirus. What made you look at exercise and coronavirus?
Started about 10 years ago. Of course, we knew nothing about COVID-19. I was purely interested in antioxidant as kind of a mediator of protection to various diseases. And one obvious in the muscle and exercise field is muscle atrophy. You already mentioned it, sarcopenia, muscle atrophy associated with aging. So we studied the antioxidant, which could play a protective role. So we bumped into this antioxidant called an extracellular superoxide dismutase. It's a long name, but it tells you that it's not sit inside of the cells, but get out of the cell and stay in between cells and get into the bloodstream. So it's called an ECSOD. So we found ECSOD is readily induced by nitric oxide, which is a small molecule that produced in our body and produced by exercise. Mm-hmm. So we naturally got very interested into this. And then I started to do a series of experiments, and I found the ECSOD is protective to many different disease conditions. Only recently we found that enhanced ECSOD expression and the production and the secretion from the skeletal muscle can get into multiple vital organs like the lung, the heart, the kidney. Those are all vital organs in our body. And then during the experiment, we found these mice are protected from this very severe condition called ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is the one cause mortality in COVID-19.
So let's talk about ARDS for a second, because I'm not a scientist, but I'm a critical thinker. And so one of the things that I was saying to Lisa the other day was, I think the reason that people die from this virus is because the stress that it puts on the cardiovascular system. So you're laying there in a bed and your body is fighting. Your heart is pumping. You're not getting enough oxygen because your lungs are inflamed. So this puts a great deal of stress. And I said to her, if you're someone who could run, for 2 or 3 hours, you probably could deal with that stress. But if you're someone who can't walk around the block without huffing and puffing, then that's going to kill you. When people die from ARDS, I have to imagine, and please correct me, they're dying of heart failure. The heart can't keep up. Is that right?
I'm sure that there are multiple organs are attacked.
Okay.
ARDS is just acute lung injury in another term. So what you said is absolutely correct. I think this is not something we don't know. We know for sure because exercise capacity, which can be only induced by exercise training, is inversely related with all cause of mortality. All cause of mortality include COVID-19. So I think you are absolutely right, but the underlying mechanism why COVID-19 caused ARDS, who is getting into the situation of ARDS, who is going to live, who is going to die, we still know very little.
So talk about your study. How was it designed?
So when we found that this antioxidant is induced by exercise, it was very interesting to me. But then something more interesting to me, because I didn't know anything about ECSOD at the time, I found that this is an extracellular antioxidant. Unlike the supplement we tend to take and say, oh, antioxidant is good, we take the supplement. This antioxidant travel in the blood, but get to the organs and they stay there. This enzyme has a unique structure, binding domains called a heparin binding domain. And this domain allow it bind to extracellular space in the structure, extracellular matrix, and the cell surface, such as the endothelial cells. So it has a specificity. I often use an analogy like a Patriot missile, and you don't drive the Patriot missile on the street to protect a city or a country. You station somewhere strategically protect the country.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So we've heard of a superoxide dismutase in the past. Is there also intracellular SOD?
Yes, there are 3 SODs in our body. SOD1, which is in the cytosol. SOD2 is in mitochondria, which is a small organelle and produce energy in literally all cells. And SOD3 is called ECSOD, is outside the cell.
Now, are they 3 mutually exclusive, or can SOD1 become SOD2 on demand and vice versa?
No, they are not the same. There are different genes. The SOD3 ECSOD has this targeting sequence to allow it to be secreted, traveled, and trafficked to outside of the cell. So only SOD3 get into the bloodstream and travel to the vital organs.
Now, when you talk about exercise, Dr. Zhen, are you talking about, because exercise is a ubiquitous term now. Are you talking about endurance training, where someone would do something that is cardio vascular, respiratory, and they are, walking, running, cycling, swimming, or are we also talking about resistance training as well, producing this extracellular SOD?
We have not done very carefully to look at the resistance training on ECSOD expression. What we have been doing is the endurance exercise, the one you mentioned, running, swimming, rowing, and things like that, biking. We don't know the evidence whether resistant exercise will promote ECSOD expression. But if you ask me as a biologist, I would probably say endurance exercise is more potent in stimulating ECSOD because it has this control element in the promoter that respond to stress, oxidative stress, which occurs during endurance exercise. But with that said, it doesn't rule out a possibility that muscle mass is also critical for the amount of ECSOD production. Therefore, resistance training is also important.
Is this kind of a dose dependent? In other words, so if I walk, I produce some. If I run, I produce more. And if I do high intensity training, I produce even more. Or is there a curve response for the production of ECSOD?
I have not done experiment to study duration and the intensity. I leave it to somebody else who are more interested in this type of features of exercise, because I have seen very interesting protective potential of ECSOD. Therefore, I quickly focus on those questions. We often call it a low-hanging fruits, and we want to make sure that we address important questions.
No, that makes perfect sense. Now, the other thing I want to bring into, and then we're going to talk about what you learned from your study. Recently, several individuals have made the news because they were young and they were supposedly fit, but yet they contracted COVID-19. But when you really start reading, these are extreme athletes, triathletes, who we know they train so hard that they actually suppress the immune system and they actually weaken their body to resist certain things. So when we talk about exercise here, we can easily differentiate between these extreme athletes who tend to almost always be sick and what you're discussing, right?
I would say that this type of exercise, we're talking about a health benefit, or we're not talking about an extreme
right.
exercise.
Right. So describe the study. What did you do with the rodents, and how did you design this study?
So I'm trained as a molecular biologist with interest in exercise. I also have a medical background. I used to be a surgeon and practice, but I gave up that career and came to the United States 31 years ago to pursue a career in basic research. So when I saw ECSOD induced by exercise, a simple thing I did was to generate an animal using genetic engineering that will make more ECSOD from skeletal muscle so that we can mimic the effect of exercise. So the first thing we did was generating the transgenic animal with a muscle-specific promoter driving the expression of ECSOD. Wow. It's not to my surprise, ECSOD level went up in skeletal muscle and got higher in the bloodstream, and we found ECSOD everywhere in peripheral organs and tissues, including the lung, the kidney, the heart. The only thing that I did not see an increase is the brain. It's probably the blood-brain barrier blocked ECSOD getting to the central nervous system.
Mm-hmm. So what did you see in these particular rodents that was miraculous, I would say, that showed you that the ECSOD had some special value to the physiology of the rodent?
Yeah, when I saw that in the high level in the blood and the high level in other tissues, I started to address the question whether this could be a mediator of the benefit of exercise. So we started to address the question whether it protects the muscle from atrophy the answer was yes. And then we asked the question, could this be protective to the heart? And we used a diabetic model, and we found that the heart failure induced by diabetes was prevented in those mice. So then my medical background gave me the instinct to look at some more severe disease conditions. So one of them is called a sepsis, and sepsis induced a multi-organ dysfunction, including ARDS. And so this is the very dismal condition for a lot of patients in the ICU. And the multi-organ dysfunction kills more than 80% of the patient in the ICU with these very severe conditions. So a model we use is LPS, which is a toxin produced by bacteria called endotoxin. So we induce endotoxemia by injecting LPS into the mice. To my pleasant surprise, I found that 50% of the transgenic animal survived the lethal dose of LPS, but 100% of the normal wild-type mouse died.
Wow. That's impressive. Yeah, I'm familiar with sepsis, and I'm familiar with the mortality rate of sepsis. It's really amazing. It's interesting because intravenous vitamin C has been used in ICUs for sepsis and has had some success, which points to the whole antioxidant reaction here. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Did you see anything that would make you think that there are some anti-aging value to ECSOD? Like, do you see these rodents compared to wild type rodents? Maybe their coat, phenotypical outward sign, their coat stays shinier, or they seem to want to mate more, lordosis and stuff like that when they have higher levels of this antioxidant.
Wow, you sound like a scientist. Yes, we have not paid attention to that yet, but we are in the process of aging some mice with muscle-specific expression of ECSOD. So we're doing the experiment in the middle of it.
So do you think that ECSOD may have some epigenetic effects on the rodents?
We don't know the answer. ECSOD itself has a lot of CPG islands in their genes. So ECSOD gene could potentially be epigenetically regulated.
This is so interesting. And we all can elevate ECSOD just by moving more, I'm minimizing it, but really this is what it comes down to: moving more, walking, jogging, riding a bicycle, swimming, getting out and doing things, which from an evolutionary perspective is exactly what we were built to do. We're not built to do this, sit here in a chair for 8 hours a day. And so if we would just abide by our evolutionary edicts, this could help a lot of people stay alive.
That's exactly right. That's also one thing make me happy and thinking all the time about it, because our body will not make something so beautiful and so abundant and so readily induced by exercise for nothing. So this ECSOD, a beautiful enzyme with a unique structure, can bind to the tissue such as the lung, the kidney. They are all vital to life, and they are not. This enzyme is not there for nothing. It is there for protection.
It's funny, we talk about exercise, and whenever I think about exercise, I think about the reality is that exercise has been an artificial replacement for something that we would have done for millions of years or hundreds of thousands of years, and that is be up, moving, working, lifting, gathering food, raising children, everything that we gravitate to. Dr. Daniel Lieberman came on my show years ago after he published his book, The Story of the Human Body. And we talked about, the humans are programmed to consume energy, but reduce the expenditure of energy, because for hundreds of thousands of years, starvation was a real issue for us, as it is with many animals today that still live in the wild. And he said, Carl, he said, if you had two coconut trees and one had an escalator in front of it, no one would climb the other coconut tree. They would take the escalator up. And it's really amazing because our predisposition is mismatched today. Our predisposition is to sit more, eat more. And people actually think about moving as, oh, I just don't want to do that. But the reality is that exercise is just an artificial replacement for something we would have had to do anyway, which is from dusk to dawn, be moving.
Unfortunately, we probably cannot return. So that's why we have to be smart and design interventions, change our lifestyles to cope with the challenge.
So I want to sum up this portion of the interview, because when we take our break and come back, I want to talk to you about your study that's being published. It's not published yet, right? It's coming out?
Oh, it's been published.
Okay, I want to talk about that one.
COVID-19, but on ARDS, which is the condition that kills most of the...
No. I actually have that study, but the other one that you alluded to a little while ago about resistance training in rodents, this new model that you came up with.
That's just been published.
Okay, good. Okay, so I want to summarize this portion. Then when we come back from the break, I want to talk about that new study. So what are you suggesting that people do in order to at least not necessarily protect themselves? That's a broad word, but to prepare themselves that should they come down with COVID-19, that it will have a less effect of actually killing them. What would you say the strategy is as far as exercise goes?
The strategy would be just go enjoy exercise. This should be part of your life. I think we as scientists, not the people on the street, still know too little about exercise. So if we can really invest more in this, understand the superb benefit of exercise, the underlying molecular mechanism, we would be able to be more motivated and design better, intervention, better way to exercise, maybe even for patients who cannot exercise regularly, get benefited from the therapeutics.
So wouldn't you think that somebody who has a low threshold exercise tolerance, and I've actually said this on the show over the past decade, I say start where you are and with what you can do. So if all you can do right now is stand during the commercials of your favorite television show, start there. Start by standing. Then maybe stand for the whole show. Then maybe start walking around the sofa a few times a day. And progression is the key here. Keep extending your reach and keep progressing. So eventually you can go out and actually walk. But don't you think that for someone who has such a low threshold exercise tolerance, that even walking may actually produce some ECSOD?
That's true. That's the good news. That's the bad news for a super athlete. They have to really train very hard to further increase ECSOD.
Right.
Yeah. So for anyone who has a lower exercise threshold and just a little bit more than what they used to have, will stimulate, because our body is really sensing the stress and say, hey, we need to increase the ECSOD to protect the organs from the future challenge. So
are you familiar with the early Japanese research on katsu?
No.
Muscle congestion, blood flow restriction?
No, not really.
Well, so we've done many shows on blood flow restriction, and I actually have blood flow restriction bands at home that I use. And what they do is they're just like a blood pressure cuff. They have a bladder, and you put them on your upper arms and your upper legs, and you blow them up to say 300 milligrams of mercury each. And and then you go out and you do very light work. You're not supposed to do anything very heavy, because what it does is it keeps the blood trapped in the muscle, but it's restriction, not occlusion. So the blood can still flow in and out, but it's just getting trapped in there. And this increases the production of nitric oxide. I would wonder if people who have a very low threshold to exercise could utilize something like blood flow restriction to dramatically increase the production of ECOS. I mean, ECSOD, I'm sorry.
It is possible. However, I would still say that the regular exercise is something that we should encourage everyone to do. And that kind of a special intervention depends on the parameter you use. If you say ECSOD is the only parameter you care about, it maybe is a better intervention. However, exercise has many, many positive impacts that we don't even know yet. Therefore, I would say that that's a different way to think about the same question.
And you know, it's amazing today. People hate exercise. They hate moving. They dread it. They think about it and they just dread it. I mean, I used to be 330 pounds, Dr. Zhen. I had diabetes. I had a heart problem. I was a mess. I was the average American. I wasn't even 40 years old. I was 39 years old when I was diagnosed with my heart problem. They wanted to put a pacemaker in me at 39 years old. And I just made a decision that I wasn't going to do that. And I lost, over the course of a decade, lost 100 pounds, added a bunch of muscle, became very, very strong. And, you know, I focused on the day-to-day changes in my strength. I didn't look in the mirror and go, oh, when am I going to lose this one? And every day there were little victories. I was able to do one more rep with this weight, or maybe I was able to stay on the elliptical machine for an hour instead of 45 minutes. And those little victories were all I focused on. So every day I had something to look forward to. And then miraculously in the process, without paying attention, I lost all the body fat. I put on a lot of muscle, and I literally came out the other end of that a completely different human being. But too many people, they watch these commercials about this supplement or that supplement, lose 50 pounds in 30 days, or, you know, buy these meals. And they really forget to look at the real process as the journey as the target, as opposed to, oh, when I can fit into these pants, then I know I'm done. It's very sad.
Congratulations. I think your success is a great story. I personally, I feel that sometimes I maybe overstated. Exercise is better than medicine. Exercise is for sure better than any single medicine. And exercise is multifaceted and has many benefits we still don't know yet. And if we learn from exercise, particularly as scientists, learn from the processes of muscle adaptation and other health benefits, we may be smarter to design interventions, pharmaceutical interventions, or other type of interventions to help a lot of people.
So real quick before we go into the break, so what was the expected rate of that people who contract ARDS would actually survive if they had upregulated the ECSOD through exercise previous to getting sick?
Well, I don't know the answer. All I know is 3 to 17% of COVID-19 patients died of ARDS.
Oh, okay.
And when patients develop the ARDS, more than 50% of them die.
Very, very sad. Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about your new study with resistance training, okay?
Okay.
All right, so stay tuned. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll have more of Dr. Zhen Yan. And also, later in the show, I'm going to talk about what I've discovered, the real path to the spread of coronavirus in different cities. You ask yourself, why does one city have so much more than another? I think I've discovered it, and it doesn't have anything to do with locking people down. So that's going to be later in the show. Stay tuned. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. How often do you sit with your laptop right on your lap? How much time do you spend on your cell phone? Are you in a technology-packed office Monday through Friday? Are you worried about this type of radiation? Now there's something you can do about it. GetLambs.com. This radiation has been linked to infertility in men, glandular tumors, gut microbiome dysbioses, and impaired sleep quality. Now you can provide 360-degree protection to at-risk parts of your body with radiation-proof apparel from GetLambs.com. Comfortable, breathable, and 99% effective. Go to GetLambs.com and use coupon code SHR for 20% off your order of $100 or more. That's GetLambs.com, GetLambs.com, and code SHR. Crank your muscle gains to new heights by transforming every gram of protein you eat into 3 grams with Masszymes. With 100,000 AQTs of protease per capsule, Masszymes increases your absorption of key amino acids, resulting in stronger, healthier digestion of proteins and certain vitamins that not only multiplies the impact of the protein you eat, but can also repair a damaged intestinal wall. Go to Masszymes/SHR for 10% off. That's MASSZYMES.com/SHR. You've heard about blood flow restricted training since 2006 on SHR, but you're still on the fence. Well, here's the push. BFR is more effective at building muscle than anabolic steroids. That's right, I went there, but it's because it's the truth. My experience with the Be Strong blood flow restriction system is proof to me, and now I'm asking myself why I waited so long. You'll see undeniable changes in the targeted muscles in days and weeks like nothing you've ever tried before. I will never stop using them. Give Be Strong a try. Go to BSTRONG.training/super-human and use code SHR for 10% off. Hey, this is Carl. For 14 years, you've heard me talk about Can-C eye drops, and they being the reason that I do not need reading glasses at now 61 years old. But I regularly get emails and messages from people who've been using Can-C and having some amazing results. Recently, I got an email from a fellow named Chad, who, because he was on dexamethasone eye drops for over 6 months, developed a cataract. Can-C eye drops actually reduced my cataract to the point where even my doctor has a hard time finding it. I will never stop using Can-C eye drops twice a day. I've been using them since 2008, he says. And you should be too. There is no better way to keep your eyes healthy and seeing clearly than Can-C eye drops. Go to wisechoicemedicine.com today and get on board, and we will both be looking into the future with very clear vision.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at Synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Zhen Yan. Now we're going to change subject just a little bit. We're going to talk about a study that was just published. I haven't read it yet. But you indicated that it gives some maybe insight into a better way to perform resistance training, right?
Yeah.
So talk about, how was this study designed?
So for years, we have endurance exercise model in animals, particularly in rodents like rat and mice. The reason people want to use mice because they're genetic engineering. We want to understand why exercise is good, what is the molecular mechanism underlying the things we saw. So my lab and many other labs use the treadmill running and a voluntary wheel running for mice to mimic endurance exercise, we saw beautiful adaptations in skeletal muscle, in the heart, and in other organs. However, a model for resistance training is lacking because you cannot train mice to lift weight. For years, people have invented various different models using surgical procedure, using the most relevant one, very close to the humans, is a ladder climbing. They put a mouse at the bottom of the ladder, and the mouse climbed up the ladder with some weights and try to get the food. And they induced the type of adaptation like the hypertrophy in the mice and the rats. So that was good. One caveat of that model is that students or postdocs or researchers, they can only train a few rats or few mice at a time. It's so tedious and not suited for large-scale studies. So I invented, during the process of studying animals, I invented a cage top. So the mouse can stand on a stage that within reach to the food through a lever plate with a hole in it. The mouse wear a collar, and so they push the lever to get the food. So you can put on the tip of the lever with some calibrated weight. So they push weight during eating. This is a model that I invented here at the University of Virginia, patented here, and now it's licensed by Cage Company in Germany.
That's so how, I mean, so basically the rodent is doing a single rep every time they receive a pellet or a reward. And do you stop feeding them at some point in time when you want them to stop, or will they just keep going all day long and to get more food?
Actually, it's not a rewarding system. It's the process. During the process of eating, they had to lift their heels and against the weight, like squats. Oh. And so they are trying to get food during this process, while unintentionally they
lifting the weight
and against the weight.
Yeah, because I remember one study I read many years ago where they actually surgically cut one of the leg muscles to produce additional loading on the muscles that was still connected to try to simulate the weightlifting. So, you know, if instead of these three muscles holding the animal up, it was just these two, and so you would see the added weight on these would produce muscle growth. Yeah, this sounds a lot nicer to the rodents, a lot better for them.
Yeah, the model of the synergistic ablation is a very potent model to stimulate a hypertrophy. Mm-hmm. One experimental problem with that is that it's 24/7 and it's super overloaded. Mm-hmm. So therefore, there are some unwanted consequences like inflammation. So this model presumably is a more physiological model.
Yeah, it does. So what did you do with the rodents that you now have a better idea of what a better resistant training program looks like?
Yeah, so we at this point we just try to prove that this is a relevant model for muscle hypertrophy and other benefits of weight training. We found that indeed they get bigger muscle and their contractility or power of the muscle is greater, just like a weightlifter. Mm-hmm. They lift the weight with a greater speed and a relaxation. So that's for the muscle part. But what we are really excited about is the metabolic benefit. These mice are super sensitive to insulin, even under the condition of a high-fat diet induced obesity. So these weightlifting can promote insulin sensitivity with stimulation of many intracellular signaling pathways.
You know, it's funny how weightlifting is so important. And for you know, when in the 70s, I used to jog and run. I ran a lot. I ran very long distances a few times a week because that's what we thought was exercise. And weightlifting seemed, oh, you'll get muscle bound and it's not good for you. You know, fast forward to today, more and more evidence. Like there was one study that we talked about on this show probably 6 years ago, I want to say, that showed that women to the age of 60 and men to the age of 65, those who maintained more muscle mass had greater longevity and health span. Their outcomes were much better. A study that I talked about in 2006 on this show from the California Veterans Administration with 16,000 men over the course of 10 or 12 years. And what they did with them was they measured leg strength and grip strength with a leg press and grip strength. And they tested them periodically. It was part of a larger study. But what they determined was the men who were strong at the beginning of the study, who maintained their strength throughout the study, had the lowest mortality rate. And, you know, you start thinking to yourself, wow, they really knew what they were talking about when they said the strong survive, only the strong survive. You know, we didn't need research to show us that whenever that saying came out 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago. But when you look at the human condition, you know, we talk about organisms. Antibiotic resistant organisms. Well, yeah, usually what happens is they get just enough of an antibiotic that doesn't kill them, and the hormetic effect makes them stronger. So now they become super bacteria, and they laugh at the antibiotics. The human being is the same way. If you're strong physically, that confers strength in other areas of you that make you resistant to dying or resistant to diseases. It makes perfect sense, right?
It makes perfect sense. And you know, in my just a single laboratory at University of Virginia, we studied the impact of exercise on many different diseases. And COVID-19 ARDS is just one example. And we have found, you know, exercise improve the microbiota. We have found, you know, exercise increase the insulin sensitivity and have impact on the brain, mood, cardiovascular benefit, and arthritis. You name it. Even exercise during pregnancy could have a positive impact on the offspring.
Yes. I every time I see a pregnant woman at the gym, I go up to her and I say, you're doing the greatest thing you can for that baby right now. Oh, I hope so. Oh, you are. Because you only have to look at the obesity in pregnant women, and their offspring come out and they're already insulin resistant to a great degree. And so if you're exercise, and you know, again, I go back to evolution. When we look at hunter-gatherer populations, the women work just as hard as the men hunting and gathering, but they have a child on their hip while they're doing it. You know, it's like this I think the Victorian era, or maybe even back to early France, we started to treat women like they were too frail and too fragile. And that's the worst thing that ever happened to women and their health, because this idea that women, oh no, don't get up, honey, I'll pick it up. No, we're robbing them of the ability to stay healthy by doing that. So.
Agree, totally agree. We have more and more evidence coming from pregnancy studies. Exercise during pregnancy can mitigate the negative consequences from the health conditions in the parents.
Talk about the microbiota. This is fascinating because this is a very, very new emerging area of medicine and science, and we really don't know a lot about it. We think we know, but we're really not sure. So what changes did you see in the exercise rodent models?
Now, that was almost like 10 years ago. We studied the impact of lifelong exercise on microbiota, and we found it changed the microbiota to anti-inflammatory type of bacteria from a kind of a pro-inflammatory bacteria environment.
That's very, very interesting. Very interesting. Did you look at diets too? But no, right? Because these rodents, they eat a certain type of chow, and that's it, right?
At that time, we only did on the normal chow. Yeah.
So, as far as the starting to look, now that you've designed this method, this contraption that will allow rodents to do resistance training on demand, are you seeing more labs wanting to investigate resistance training for its potential value in the human condition?
Yeah, I have a lot of collaborators. I just have to find time to build the cages. And right now, the company TSE in Germany is licensing it. So I hope their product will be on the market soon, and it will be very popular.
Very fascinating. We're going to take our last commercial break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up the interview. Stay tuned. Ever wish there was a precise way to gauge your recovery from workout to workout? Or wonder if the money you're spending on your nootropic supplements are actually improving brain function? Maybe you're aging and you're noticing some changes in memory. Wouldn't being able to really test your brain be of great value? Well, now you can with great accuracy with the Brain Gauge. The Brain Gauge lets you test essential components of brain health and track your brain health history, and all in the comfort of your own home. Go to gaugeyourbrain.com and use code SHR for $150 off this amazing device. That's gaugeyourbrain.com and SHR for $150 off. I love beef, and if you love beef, listen up. I've discovered the best tasting beef in the world, and that's not an exaggeration, at Piedmontese.com. The Piedmontese breed is famous from Italy for being lean and unbelievably tender, with half the fat and calories of traditional beef. Even typically tough cuts are tender when it comes from the Piedmontese cows. And for the first time ever, Piedmontese cows are being raised here in the USA. Get 2 free 10-ounce New York strips when you purchase $50 or more at Piedmontese.com with code SHR. Go to Piedmontese.com and use code SHR today. You will never eat any other type of beef ever again.
Men and women, you've heard about hormone optimization. Do you feel like it's something you want to look into? RenewLifeRx.com is the place to start. Their doctors can help you with the solutions. RenewLifeRx.com has a simple process for lab work, consultation, and taking a deep dive into where your hormone levels can be improved. Superhuman Radio listeners get 30% off your initial lab work and consultation. Go to RenewLifeRx.com to schedule your no-obligation phone consultation today. Feel younger, get in better shape, and be more productive at RenewLifeRx.com.
Quest Nutrition makes bars, cookies, chips, and pizzas out of complete dairy-based proteins. Our products minimize net carbs and sugar without sacrificing taste. Each delicious chocolate-flavored chip, cookie chunk, and crunchy crumble is custom made to maintain Quest macros. It's time to enjoy foods that work for you, not against you. It's time to enjoy your Quest.
Redcon One is one of the fastest growing supplement companies in the world today. That's because they produce supplements that deliver on their promises. From their flagship pre-workout Total War to their innovative whole food MREs and bars. Now you can get the deepest discount ever offered to any audience anywhere. Use code SHR and get 25% off all Redcon One products today. SHR and 25% off. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com. You've heard me talk about the chill pill on the show and how effective it is at helping people who suffer from social anxiety, or sometimes when you just want to take the edge off to a long, stressful day. Well, listen to this story from Dylan Goutreau.
Definitely takes anxiety away, which I have a long history of having. Started out at 2 milligrams a day of Xanax. That was at 8 years old. And so I stopped using benzos 3 years ago. Extremely difficult. Yeah, so I spent about 3 years trying to find anything and everything I could that would be healthy for me to help with anxiety. Because I'm talking, full out panic attack. The chill pill was the first thing that I found that actually in the middle of a panic attack I can take, and it definitely subsides.
Go to drseeds.com. That's DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your first bottle of the chill pill. Check it out. I promise this is one supplement that delivers.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
We're ripped and we're ready. I'd like to find out how many people in my audience have contracted coronavirus. I bet it's a very, very small number because we're all very active. Everybody bought gym equipment because we can't go to the gym and we're training at home, and it's that would be fascinating. I don't know how I would go about doing that, but anyway, we're talking right now with Dr. Zhen Yan, and we're talking about some of his research. He's done a lot of research in the area of muscle and its ability to confer health through exercise. And as you can see, he's also an inventor. He's inventing things to get little rodents to lift weights. If I had to be a rodent, I want to be in your lab because I know I'm going to be buffed and strong when you're all done with me. So that's a pretty good thing. What do you want people to take away from your research, Dr. Zhen?
I would say that we have to understand exercise is an inherent ability we have. Our body moves and our body sense our movement. So exercise is part of our life. And we have to enjoy exercise rather than have this mentality that this is a painful, I don't want to do it. And I only know that exercise is good very superficially, not really understanding exercise has many positive benefits. And some of these examples that I gave was just a few examples. So if we understand really exercise is beneficial for our health and our health span, we should do it regularly and enjoy it. So the take-home message is to enjoy it, and then for scientists to find out why exercise is so good, and then we can develop the therapeutics.
But we really, I understand that science's goal is to explain why things are the way they are. But when you really think about it, we really don't need to explain it to people why it's good for them. If we realize, like, okay, so when I was a young man, I worked on the racetrack with thoroughbred racehorses. And something that most people don't know about racehorses, because they're so high strung, they really don't like being kept in a stall, because these are animals that like to run. If given them freedom to do whatever they want, they would eat grass and they would run and probably have sex, and that would be it. But when you put a racehorse in a stall for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, because they do come out, you have to walk them a couple times a day, they develop neurotic tendencies. Like we used to have horses that were cribbers. And so cribbing is when a horse takes his upper teeth and grabs something like the stall door, pulls on it, and lets out a burp. Or we had stall walkers, horses that would just walk in a circle all day long. They would literally wear the floorboards out of the stalls. And so when you look at this, we don't really need science to tell us why horses are doing this. It's because we've got them confined, and that's not natural for their beings. And it's also not natural for humans not to expend large amounts of energy every single day. When we look at elite athletes and hunter-gatherers, what we learn is that they can eat as much as 20,000 calories a day and be lean and muscular. So this notion that 2,000 calories a day is the recommended daily intake for a 6-foot man or a woman, these are made up numbers. This is fabricated. This is nonsense. Because if we were not modernized, all the diseases we have today, not all of them, some of them you're born with, but most of the diseases we have today are diseases of modernity because of our creature comforts, air conditioning and comfortable chairs and all that sort of stuff. Because the reality is that if we were out there on the Serengeti hunting and building and fixing and raising children, we'd burn 15,000, 20,000 calories a day. We'd have to consume that, not to just die. So this is, we've got it all wrong today. And we have to, the kind of research you're doing, to me, is more valuable than, I don't know, studies on, micronutrients and stuff like that. We need to move more. We need to be in gear all the time.
And that was the intention of research, is to have impact to the society. I'm not a sociologist. I cannot give you better example, but I think what we learn from research, I hope that it will have impact on different aspects of our society, like, even change the architecture, the building environment, change the way we have our streets constructed. And so we have impact on individuals. And of course, if everyone on the street understand how wonderful exercise is, that's great. And that's education too for our kids. We have to change. So years ago, I started an initiative, try to establish an institute called the Health Span Institute to study not just the exercise, many aspects of lifestyle intervention on health span.
What other interventions are you talking about?
We have faculties from, architecture, leadership, School of Nursing, Medicine, Engineering, and Arts and Science. I was dreaming to have people from different disciplines sitting at the same table.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
Asking the question, how could we design the future? Although we probably cannot go back to ancient times, but we have to face the future. How to design better so people have healthy lifestyle.
Well, look at cities in Europe that are, here in the United States, we're a few hundred years old. You go to Europe, they're thousands of years old. When you go to these cities, one of the things you notice is that the streets are very narrow because they didn't have cars back then. And everybody walks or rides a bicycle everywhere. I wrote an article probably a decade ago saying the French paradox missed it. It's not the food, it's the fact that the French walk to and from the restaurant. My grandfather, after a meal, my grandfather was from Italy. After they had a big meal, he got his hat. Hey, Pop, where you going? I'm going to go for a walk. After eating a meal, he went for a walk. We know, science has shown us that walking after a meal is more effective at controlling postprandial blood sugar than metformin. Oh my God, you mean just getting up and walking after a meal? I mean, you could change disease, type 2 diabetes overnight if people would just get up and walk after they ate every time. And so it baffles me. Here's what I think would have the greatest impact on overall health. Okay, maybe we can't rebuild the cities and we can't get people to ride bicycles, but when I was a kid, the TV stations shut down at 12 o'clock at night. All the stations went off the air. All they had was the test pattern. One of the greatest contributors to type 2 diabetes today is that people stay up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning watching television. Blue light activating shutting down the pineal gland from producing melatonin. They sit up. What do? They eat. If we just made TV shows stop, all the cable stop broadcasting at 12 o'clock at night, more people would go to bed at midnight. That's still 2 or 3 hours too late as far as I'm concerned, because I go to bed at 9. But at least they would go to sleep and get 8 hours of sleep without being activated with blue light. I mean, that would have probably the greatest impact on type 2 diabetes. Just make the TV channels shut off by midnight at night. That's it. So,
yeah, this point to more research is needed to understand not just the exercise, the lifestyle intervention, our circadian rhythm, nutrition, exercise, mental state, spiritual state, all matters.
Yeah, you're right. I love your work. I hope that you'll come back on the show. I'll have Elisa send you an email later today so that when you have more research that's being published, that we'll get it right away and we'll come right on the show, okay?
I'll be happy to be here.
This is great. Thank you for being here today, Dr. Zhen.
Thank you.
Take care. We're going to take one quick commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you why some cities have high rates of COVID-19 and some cities don't. You think I can't figure this stuff out because I'm too stupid, right? And not only am I convinced of it, but I have a statistician that's going to come on Thursday for a half hour. I've already given my theory to him and my premise, and he's working on it. And his early reply to me is, there's something to it. You know, I wrote an article on my blog about 7 weeks ago about sun and its production of vitamin D, protecting people against coronavirus. And mainstream media doesn't know anything about that. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's coming, oh, well, the sun. It's like my audience knew this 7 or 8 weeks ago. Vitamin D. We talked about how vitamin D saves people from sepsis. The good doctor was just talking about how sepsis kills 80% of the people who get it. So, you know, I don't have that much of a reach for whatever reason. Maybe people don't like me or whatever. But I know what I'm talking about some of these things. And the next thing I'm going to talk to you about after this break, I think you're all going to go, wow, Carl's onto something. I can tell you why these cities that have high occurrence and high deaths of coronavirus versus the places that don't have high death and high rates of coronavirus, why it is. And it's a very simple concept. And when I explain it, you'll get it. Stay tuned. $7,451. That's how many people kick the bucket, buy the farm, or cash in their chips every day in the United States. Yep, that means 5 people are going to meet their maker during this commercial. And no, our commercials are not the cause. Half of those who punch the clock for the final time will do so without life insurance. Call Big Lou at Term Provider before you're number 7452. If you're a 50-year-old male, a tad porky with a touch of diabetes, $1 million of term life insurance may only cost about $200 a month. With more verified 5-star reviews than any other Lou on the radio, Big Lou has saved thousands of people thousands on their term insurance premiums. Stop procrastinating and call Big Lou today at 800-560-0301. 800-560-0301. Remember, Big Lou's like you. He doesn't want to be number 7,452. Call 800-560-0301 or biglou.com. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor? Strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. How often do you sit with your laptop right on your lap? How much time do you spend on your cell phone? Are you in a technology-packed office Monday through Friday? Are you worried about this type of radiation? Now there's something you can do about it. GetLambs.com. This radiation has been linked to infertility in men, glandular tumors, gut microbiome dysbioses, and impaired sleep quality. Now you can provide 360-degree protection to at-risk parts of your body with radiation-proof apparel from GetLambs.com. Comfortable, breathable, and 99% effective. Go to GetLambs.com and use coupon code SHR for 20% off your order of $100 or more. That's GetLambs.com, GetLambs.com, and code SHR. Ever wish there was a precise way to gauge your recovery from workout to workout? Or wonder if the money you're spending on your nootropic supplements are actually improving brain function? Maybe you're aging and you're noticing some changes in memory. Wouldn't being able to really test your brain be of great value? Well, now you can with great accuracy with the Brain Gauge. The Brain Gauge lets you test essential components of brain health and track your brain health history, and all in the comfort of your own home. Go to gaugeyourbrain.com and use code SHR for $150 off this amazing device. That's gaugeyourbrain.com and SHR for $150 off. I love beef, and if you love beef, listen up. I've discovered the best tasting beef in the world, and that's not an exaggeration, at Piedmontese.com. The Piedmontese breed is famous from Italy for being lean and unbelievably tender, with half the fat and calories of traditional beef. Even typically tough cuts are tender when it comes from the Piedmontese cows. And for the first time ever, Piedmontese cows are being raised here in the USA. Get 2 free 10-ounce New York strips when you purchase $50 or more at Piedmontese.com with code SHR. Go to PIEDMONTESE.com and use code SHR today. You will never eat any other type of beef ever again. Are you still on the fence about Body Protection Complex BPC Oral from drseeds.com? Listen to Maggie Kuhn, one of the owners of the C-Bus Lifting Company gym in Columbus, Ohio.
I had been having some nagging tendon issues that weren't injuries, just things that were annoying. You know, I'm 58 years old, so just older tendon kind of issues. For us however, you know, we really don't stop training when we have just nagging issues. We just kind of keep pushing through. And I started the BPC. What I noticed was I was doing some heavy tricep stuff that would have killed me before when I had an elbow problem, and I was able to do those with literally no pain at all.
Go to drseeds.com, DRSEEDS.com. Use coupon code SHR and save 20% off your bottle of BPC Body Protection Complex today.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Come on, Carl, what do you know? Stay in your lane. I am in my lane. I connect dots. I think critically. So have you asked yourself why COVID-19 hits some places harder than others? I've thought about it a lot, actually. And it dawned on me. There are 2 characteristics that the places the hardest hit. And what I mean by the hardest hit, not only did they have the virus show up earlier than other places, but they also had the greatest impact of the virus. More cases, like New York City, an epicenter. And I've thought about this a lot because, well, the governor here in Kentucky, Andy Beshear, he's taking credit for something that he doesn't deserve credit for. And there's a lot of governors right now that are taking credit for some things that they don't deserve credit for. They're taking credit for slowing the spread of COVID-19 because of the way they've pushed the population into their homes and make them stay there, when in reality, it's really not them. It's not. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean here in Kentucky, instead of having 170 deaths for the whole state, we wouldn't have had 270. That's not what I'm saying. We probably would have had more deaths. Yeah. But the reality is that we are never going to be a hotbed here for COVID-19, even if no one changed the way they lived. So there's 2 things to pay attention to when you look at pandemics, right? Seeding and spreading. So seeding is the initial cases that show up on the scene. And then spreading is, like it says, how does it spread in the population? Now, we know that COVID-19 is more contagious than the flu, or at least we think so. You know, here's another thing I didn't plan on talking about this, but it's something else I'm going to do a deep dive on at some point in time. If we started testing for the flu, would we find out that more people actually have the flu every year, but they just don't get symptoms, or they get a cold? Oh, I just had a cold. It wasn't the flu. What if their immune systems are strong enough where they got symptoms like a cold, but they actually had influenza? If we started testing population-wide, I predict that we'll find that out. I think that we're going to find out, oh, man, a lot more people actually get influenza than actually end up in the hospital with influenza. We just assume influenza brings everybody down. It doesn't, just like COVID-19 doesn't. So that's another thing that we've shed light on here. Just because you catch a virus doesn't mean that you act like or look like or smell like you caught a virus. Some of us just go through life and go, yeah, I felt a little washed out one day, but that was it. I'm sure that the same is true of influenza and the seasonal flu, but okay. So we know that this virus started outside the United States. There are some people out there who are claiming, no, it started inside the United States. Not this strain. There's different strains. And in fact, my friend Mark, who came on and talked about the model he built, he's a statistician. He works in the industry of actuarial and statistics, came on the show when it all first started, and he made some predictions, and those numbers are actually pretty close to what he predicted. And so he's going to come on the show and talk about this, and he's a lot more conservative with numbers than I am, rightfully so. And I'm sure he's going to say, but he already told me there's something to this, and he's digging deeper in it for me to do a show. So we know that this virus started outside the United States, so it had to get into the United States. And how does it get into the United States? It gets into the United States by boats, passengers on cruise ships, and by airplanes. And if you first look at cities and states, and mainly cities, that have a high rate of international travel, you see New York, you see Los Angeles, you see, Chicago, you see a lot of different places, but you don't see Louisville, Kentucky. Like, sure, people fly out of Louisville to go to Mexico or to go to Europe, but they fly to JFK and then they go. I'm talking about the places that have large international travel hubs, And they're easy to figure out. They're on the coasts and they're in the major cities. Texas is parts of Texas. So when you first start to look at that, well, how does the virus get here? Well, it had to get here by travelers. It had to get here from people who were traveling abroad. And those people travel by cruise ships or by airplanes. That's it. So when you look at the places that have the largest hubs of international travel, you go, oh, wow, that's how it got there. But now we know that it's transmitted very easily. I think they say it's 2.5 people. If one person gets it, they will infect 2.5 other people, which is a lot more than influenza, we think. Remember, we don't know that for sure. But then the spreading, it's like, okay, so how does it spread? So if you look at the places that have the largest dependency on mass transit, well-developed bus and train lines, oh my God, it's like, oh wow, wait a minute. Like, yeah, did you hear that South Dakota and North Dakota don't have any cases? Yeah, they're not a hub for international travel, and they don't have any mass transit. It becomes very, very obvious to me how this virus got here and how it is spreading. So when you start to look at the places, and we're going to talk about this in depth, when you start to look at the places that have a large amount of international travel and mass transit, you go, oh my God, so the places that don't have international travel. Now you're going to say, well, Carl, if we don't have international travel in Kentucky, how did it get here? Well, people still travel. So there's a synthetic response to this, or a synthetic process. Sure, somebody who, like I know a guy who's owns a restaurant here in Louisville, and him and his wife didn't have it. But his daughter and grandchildren were in New York, and they were afraid to stay in New York. So they came here. Well, guess what? They had it. They gave it to him and his wife. So sure, there are second leaps and third leaps of people traveling to different cities and states that are then bringing it with them. But when you look at the initial explosions, it's completely supported by my theory that if they have large international travel hubs and large dependency on mass transit, it's like, duh. So all these states that don't have that, they really didn't need to take the measures that New York did. Look, if it snows in New York, but it doesn't snow in your city, should you shovel snow? Of course not. It didn't snow where you are, right? Well, New York has a problem that's unique to New York because they have a huge dependency on mass transit. Everybody takes the buses. Even people who own cars that live out in Long Island take the Long Island Railroad to go into Manhattan. They have a huge dependency on mass transit, and they have probably the largest international travel hub in the world, well, in the United States. In the United States. So is it any, can it be any more obvious why they have the problem that they have? And so to all you governors out there and mayors out there who are beating your chest and saying, we're saving lives, we're crushing it. Because Andy Bashir is saying the things that he's done are the reason we don't have the cases of coronavirus here. That's completely a lie. It's disingenuous. And quite frankly, him saying that is the same thing as saying, well, Governor Cuomo sucks. He didn't do anything right. I did everything right. That's why we only have 108 deaths here, or 180, whatever it is. And Cuomo sucks because he's got thousands of deaths. No. If Andy Bashir did what he's doing here in Louisville, Kentucky, and New York, they would have had the same outcome in New York because the seeding and spread of it is greater and faster because they are an international travel hub and they have a huge dependency on mass transit. So if you live in a state where your governor is beating his chest and saying, we saved lives by making you stay in the house, they may have saved a few lives. I'm not going to take that away from them. But there's no way Kentucky would have ever been in New York. There's no way, I don't know, Montana would ever be in New York. It's not an international travel hub, and they have virtually zero dependency on mass transit. This stuff is so easy when you're a dimwit like me. And I'm sure I'm going to get pushed back by these statements, but that's okay because we're going to do a show with a guy who's brilliant about numbers. He's an amazing statistician. He's also extremely conservative. He'll push back on me, I know. But I don't care what anybody says. That's it. That's the reason. So if you really want to stop pandemics, start to think about the contribution by international travel and mass transit to get that out into the public, and then that public travels inside the country and they bring it to other places. The other thing that I hope comes from all this is there are a lot of lazy, fat people out there who need to start exercising and eating right and sleeping right, because you are the reason that the rest of us are locked in our house. Like if the government would have said, if you have a type 2 diabetes or fibromyalgia or something else, and you're worried that you could be compromised by this virus and die, then you stay home. But everybody else, go ahead and do your thing. Now, obviously, if you live in a household with somebody like that, special precautions have to be taken because you don't want to bring it home to them, obviously. But this idea that we have to shut the whole country down was a huge mistake, because the reality is we just had to shut New York and New Jersey down and maybe a couple other states and keep their people from traveling to Florida and other places and bringing it with them. But no, you can't do that because that's unfair. If everybody's life has to suck, if my life is going to suck, that's the attitude. But anyway, international travel, mass transit, think about it and let me know what you think. Email me at onair@superhumanradio.com. I'm sorry, .net. Ooh. onair@superhumanradio.net. We don't have the .com anymore. So there you go. All right, that's it for today. We have the Blueprint Power Hour tomorrow. Elisa has some great shows booked. This Friday, I'm having a guest on, and we're going to talk about the actual COVID-19 cover-up. And a lot of you have emailed me and wanted me to have her on. I'm not going to say who it is yet until we get closer. We'll post the show. But she's got some bombs to drop, so don't miss that. That's Friday. All right, that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Share the show. Help me reach more people if you think that I know what I'm talking about. If not, don't. Unfortunately, folks do not. Here, wait a second. Folks do not wear badges that tell their ailments. Yes, you're right. You're right. But you know what, Patrick? They could actually take it upon themselves to stay home. If you know that you are sick and you're worried about dying from this, then you have to just take it upon yourself to self-quarantine. I mean, that's the responsible thing to do. It really is. But anyway, all right, that's it for today. Thank you for being here. Don't forget, exercise is, muscle is metabolic currency. So get into the gym. Well, you can't get into the gym right now, but train at home and make a deposit. I will see you tomorrow.